البهو هبت رياح هباء فطار القصيد يحاكي الهوى رياح السموم وكف الغيوم تنادي ألا من جلا.
وأعظم ما يحصل عند الناس من الجهل يكون سببه الرجوع إلى من لا يوثق به في علمه. تجده يستند فيما يأخذه من معلومات إلى ما في بعض المواقع التي تكون في الانترنت، المواقع الحوارية. من كتب هذا المقال الذي أخذت منه هذه المعلومة؟ قال وجدته في الساحات. من كتبه؟ قال لا أعلم. شخص رمزه سين ألف باء. كيف ترجع إلى من لا تعرفه ولا تثق به ولا تعرف مكانته؟ هذا من الأمور.
Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, il a dit, les gens continueront à être dans le bien tant qu'ils prendront le ilm de leurs grands parmi leurs ulama et les gens qui sont fiables. Et s'ils les prennent de leurs petits et de leurs mauvais, ils seront perdus, ils vont périr. L'imam Ibn Qutayba, un des imams parmi les salafs contemporains de l'imam Ahmad, il disait que cette affaire de Ibn Mas'ud, ça signifie quoi? Ça signifie que les gens continueront toujours à être dans le bien tant qu'ils prennent leur connaissance de leurs ulama les plus âgés, les plus vieux, hein? Et que leurs ulama ne soient pas parmi les jeunes, parce que le chef, lorsqu'il est âgé, il n'a plus cette jouissance de la jeunesse, et il a l'expérience. La personne qui est plus vieux, il a l'expérience, il a la connaissance, il a l'expérience de différentes choses, et donc la shubha, elle ne peut pas entrer facilement dans sa connaissance, et les passions également ne peuvent pas avoir facilement le dessus sur lui.
كيف ترجع إلى من لا تعرفه ولا تثق به ولا تعرف مكانته؟ هذا من الأمور المحرمة شرعا. كذلك عندما يرجع إلى كتابة كتبها شخص رمز لاسمه برمز حامل الإسلام. من هو حامل الإسلام هذا؟ متقي ربه. من هو متقي ربه؟ قال هكذا وجدناه يوقع في الانترنت بهذا الرمز. هذا مجهول، ولا يجوز الرجوع إلى المجهولين، وإنما يرجع إلى أهل العلم.
Donc ici vous pouvez voir ce qu'a dit Cheikh Abdel Mohsin Al-Abbad sur Al-Qaïda lorsqu'on lui a posé la question sur Al-Qaïda.
يقول البعض إن تنظيم القاعدة المعاصر خوارج، ويقول آخرون هم مجاهدون، فما رأيكم؟
نعم مجاهدون في سبيل الشيطان.
C'est-à-dire donc ils font leur djihad dans la voie du diable. Voilà pour ce qui est d'un des savants de la sunna de notre époque qui répond donc à cela de manière claire.
If that's what we mean by terrorism, targeting civilians, then it is absolutely clear from the Sharia, from the Islamic law, from the way that has been taught to us by Allah through His Prophet Muhammad, that such a way of fighting or conducting one's affairs is not allowed.
أبي رحيم كشربة ماء طعنت فطوبى ولا من شقاء وأمي أمي كفاك بكاء فدينك يعلو وكل هرى.
In one particular incident, we find that the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, after a battle, had noticed that his companions were gathered around something, and he said to one of the companions who was standing near him, "What is that? What is going on over there?" And his companion said, "O Messenger of God, it is a woman who was killed in the course of the fighting." And the Prophet Muhammad said, "That is not one against whom war should be fought." If the Prophet Muhammad showed his disapproval of a woman being killed in the actual battlefield, then how possibly could Islam allow targeting of women and children as an act of warfare?
This is the commands from Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, and his successors after him. He says when he sends an army to war to defend themselves, he says, do not kill a woman, do not kill a child, do not kill an old man, do not kill an animal, do not cut a tree down, do not pollute their water, do not burn their homes, do not invade them at night. When he was asked why you should not invade them at night, he says, so you may not wake the nursing mother and child. He says, you will see those who devoted themselves to worship God in their own ways. Leave them to worship God in their own ways. That's freedom of religion. And he says, fight only those who fight you. Fight only those who fight you. So if you're coming to fight me, I fight you. If you're not coming to fight me, you're off me. يعلو الكتاب ويخبو سواه وينصر جندا ألح الدعاء يعلو الكتاب ويخبو سواه وينصر جندا ألح الدعاء ألح الدعاء.
ويطالبوننا بأن نتصدى لهم فقط بأسلحتنا الخفيفة. هذا محال. كما يقصفون يقصفون، وكما يقتلون يقتلون. يقول الحق تبارك وتعالى: الشهر الحرام بالشهر الحرام والحرمات قصاص، فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم.
And why should we target their military only? Because to do otherwise would violate the precepts of that idol, that false god called international law, which, as we've conclusively shown, they themselves violate? No, thanks. We have our own law, the law of God, who says in his book, وَإِنْ آقَبْتُمْ فَآقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا أُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. And if you punish, let your punishment be proportionate to the wrong that has been done to you.
So they kill our innocents. So therefore this ayat is clear, telling us that we can also go and we can do the same thing and plant bombs and blow them up on the plane, on the bus, in the local library, in the school, and just kill them because they killed our innocents. So what is the Sheikh's position concerning this ayat that's in the book of Allah?
I'll ask every one of you. Somebody came to a man and he raped his daughter. Can her father go and rape the other daughter? And he come to this verse and say, "When عاقبتم فعاقبوا مثل ما عوقبتم به." Can he do this? Why? That man came and raped his daughter. Why don't he can go and rape the other daughter? Why? Because this is haram from Allah. If this man did this, I cannot do this, because this is haram. So we have to distinguish between things. وَإِنْ عَاقَبْتُمْ فَعَاقِبُوا مِثْلِ مَا عُوقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. The scholar says if somebody came to kill, which is qasas, what do you call qasas?
The law of retribution, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
They came to the, if somebody kills somebody by burning him, they say they cannot make qasas by burning him. Why? Because burning the people is haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the only one who punished by burning. So we have to distinguish. Not everything they do, we will do. If they kill our we cannot kill their children, because Prophet Muhammad ordered us not to kill the children.
Il y a un ménage à suivre pour ce qui est de la compréhension des paroles des savants. Donc, dans ce sens-là, je vais développer, Inch'Allah, dans ce sens-là, il est facile pour toute personne de pouvoir prendre des paroles de certains savants, et c'est ce que font de manière quotidienne ceux qui suivent le minhaj des takfiriyin ou le minhaj al-khawarij. Ils ont fait cela dans un premier temps avec les textes du Coran et de la Sunna. Et c'est pour cela qu'on va voir que beaucoup de gens d'innovation, parmi ceux qui sont rentrés dans le takfir, ils vont prendre des paroles de grands savants connus pour avoir appelé au contraire de ce qu'ils appellent eux. C'est quand même assez extraordinaire, mais c'est leur façon de faire. Donc eux, ils arrivent à prendre des paroles des savants et de faire croire aux gens que ce qu'a dit le shir, c'est muwafiq, en conformité avec ce que lui, il appelle, ou ce à quoi lui, il appelle. Ça, c'est un procédé qui est connu chez les gens de l'innovation. C'est pas un procédé qui date d'aujourd'hui. Ça, c'est un procédé qui date depuis que le Coran il est descendu. Et Allah Azza wa Jal nous a mis en garde de ces gens-là. Et le prophète sallallahu alayhi wa sallam nous a mis en garde de ces gens-là.
فإن قيل لو فعلوا ذلك بنا بأن قتلوا صبياننا ونساءنا فهل نقتلهم؟ الظاهر أنه لنا أن نقتل النساء والصبيان ولو فاتت علينا المالية لما في ذلك من كسر قلوب الأعداء وإهانتهم، ولعموم قوله تعالى فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم.
One of the ulama of Islam, may Allah have mercy upon him, he said it's permissible for us to kill their children and to kill their women. He said that. You can hear that. So they take that and they say, the same scholar, they reject him. But when he said that, they said even Sheikh so-and-so said this. So what does the Sheikh have to say about that minhaj? What does he have to say about that particular issue?
My answer first of all, this scholar said this. Does he mean that everybody can do this, or this is during the war? So you have to distinguish between things that you can do or the Muslim can do during the war and things that they can do during the peacetime. So this scholar, as he mentioned, he's talking about when there is a war between a non-Muslim country and the Muslim country and they came to kill our children. He said we might kill their children because punish them as the way that they punish us. This is during war and this is by the ruler. He says this. He ordered this, even though this is a weak opinion. And this is a very weak opinion because children we cannot do, we cannot kill, except if we except of some situation that the scholar says that if we cannot fight them, we cannot help ourselves or protect ourselves unless we throw the bombs, and some children might die during war. They said you have to try to avoid them during the war, but if somebody of some children died, this is not you didn't
because of collateral damage. Some people just gonna die because the bomb went, and it's gonna be indiscriminate, and people will get killed.
This is the situation that he's talking about, like throwing bombings or something, and some children might kill. But you go to the children right away and kill them. This is haram, and we have to know that this kind of things he's talking about the war, and he's talking about the war where the ruler he asked the people to do this. We're not talking about peacetime. We're not talking about general people. We're not talking about people who are living here. So we have to understand these kind of things. And this shows that these people, the Takfiri, they are following their desires. They are not following the truth.
الآن الدين الإسلامي عند الكفار هل بلغ عامتهم على وجه غير مشوش؟ عجيب. لا أبدا. ولما ظهرت قضية الإخوان الذين يتصرفون بغير حكمة ازداد تشويه الإسلام في نظر الغربيين وغير الغربيين، وأعني بهم أولئك الذين يلقون المتفجرات في صفوف الناس زعما منهم أن هذا من الجهاد في سبيل الله، والحقيقة أنهم أساءوا إلى الإسلام وأهل الإسلام أكثر بكثير مما أحسن. ماذا أنتج هؤلاء؟ أسألكم هل أقبل الكفار على الإسلام أو ازدادوا نفرة منه؟ ازدادوا نفرة منه. وأهل الإسلام يكاد الإنسان يغطي وجهه لئلا ينسب إلى هذه الطائفة المرجفة المروعة، والإسلام بريء منهم. الإسلام بريء منهم. حتى بعد أن فرض الجهاد ما كان الصحابة رضي الله عنهم يذهبون إلى مجتمع الكفار يقتلونه أبدا، إلا بجهاد له راية من ولي قادر على الجهاد. أما هذا الإرهاب فهو والله نقص على المسلمين، أقسم بالله، لأننا نجد نتائج ما في نتيجة أبدا، بل هو بالعكس في تشويه السمعة. ولو أننا سلكنا الحكمة فاتقينا الله في أنفسنا وأصلحنا أنفسنا أولا ثم حاولنا إصلاح غيرنا بالطرق الشرعية لكان نتيجة هذا نتيجة طيبة.
نحن نقول العمليات الانتحارية في الزمن الحاضر الآن كلها غير مشروعة وكلها محرمة، وقد تكون من النوع الذي يخلد صاحبه في النار، وقد تكون من النوع الذي لا يخلد صاحبه في النار كما أشرت آنفا. أما أن يكون عملية الانتحار قربة يتقرب بها إلى الله، اليوم إنسان يقاتل في سبيل أرضه في سبيل وطنه، هذه العمليات الانتحارية ليست إسلامية إطلاقا.
Il y avait un récit qui dit que pendant une des batailles, Abdullah ibn Zubayr était tellement courageux qu'il a demandé aux autres sahaba de le catapulter dans le camp adverse. Il voulait vraiment, subhanallah, donner le maximum de lui-même, et il a demandé à être catapulté dans le camp adverse. Et ils l'ont fait, d'accord. Il est arrivé dans le camp adverse et subhanallah, avec sa force et son courage, il est arrivé à bout d'une quantité d'ennemis. Et pour qu'on sait cette histoire, le but c'est pas de dire on n'encourage pas la violence, là c'est la guerre. Là c'est la guerre où si c'est pas le musulman qui tue le romain, c'est le romain qui tue le musulman. Et cette notion de guerre, elle existait à toutes les époques. Donc là il fallait se battre pour se défendre. Mais malheureusement cette histoire est souvent détournée par depuis une dizaine d'années, par les personnes qui se disent, j'aime pas trop le mot, les personnes qui se disent des kamikazes, d'accord, ils se disent qu'on a le droit de se tuer, de se suicider pour la cause de la religion, entre guillemets, tout ça sans guillemets. Et un de leurs preuves, c'est cette histoire, ils disent que voilà, lui il s'est catapulté dans l'armée ennemie, et donc c'est un suicide dans le but de provoquer le maximum de dégâts dans l'armée ennemie. Mais les ulama, lorsqu'ils ont compris quel était l'objectif de ces personnes qui utilisaient, qui détournaient un peu ce récit, ils ont immédiatement rectifié le tir. Abdullah ibn Zubayr l'a fait par courage, parce qu'il sait pertinemment en tant que sahaba, voilà, qu'une personne n'a pas le droit de se jeter, de se précipiter dans sa destruction, donc de se suicider. Donc c'était un geste de guerre. Il a voulu être précipité, catapulté dans l'armée ennemie pour se battre, et son but n'était pas de se suicider. Parce que tout le monde connaît l'histoire également du sahaba qui, après une guerre, il était tellement blessé Il était tellement blessé qu'il souffrait tellement qu'à un moment donné, il a retourné l'épée contre lui-même et il s'est donné la mort. Et le prophète a décrit cela comme un péché. Cette personne s'est suicidée malgré que la personne était souffrante. Donc les Sahaba connaissaient quelle est la différence entre se battre et se suicider. Donc ce que Abdullah ibn Zubayr avait fait à cette époque ne peut en aucun cas être assimilé à un acte de suicide. Et donc ce que les kamikazes disent en se donnant la mort entre guillemets pour la cause de la religion, c'est un argument complètement déviant qui n'a aucun rapport avec l'action de Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiyallahu anhuma.
وقوله سبحانه وتعالى وإن عاقبتم فعاقبوا بمثل ما عوقبتم به. قال أهل العلم صاحب الاختيارات وغيره من أهل العلم وابن القيم رحمه الله والشوكاني وغيرهم كثير والقرطبي رحمه الله في تفسيره أن الكفار إذا تقصدوا أن يقتلوا لنا نساء أو أطفالا فلا حرج أن نعاملهم بالمثل ردعا لهم عن أن يعيدوا الكرة لقتل أطفالنا ونسائنا. هذا من الناحية الشرعية.
Ibn Hajar says, Ibn Battal says, the consensus of Muslim scholars is that it is totally prohibited to target women and children.
إنما دعوته وحديثه يدل على أنه جاهل ظن نفسه عالما.
If somebody wants to know about Islam and how we should deal with non-Muslims in Islam, then we look to the Quran and the Sunnah the way that it was understood by the companions. We do not look to Bin Laden, that deviant who the scholars of Islam warned against way before 9/11.
L'imam al-Salafi, parmi les salafs de cette ummah, Al-Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah, un des tabi'in, un des grands parmi les tabi'in, il disait quoi? Il disait la fitna, les gens, les ulama la connaissent lorsqu'elle approche, avant qu'elle arrive. Mais lorsqu'elle est partie, tout le monde la connaît, même tous les ignorants la connaissent. C'est-à-dire, les ulama, ils connaissent la fitna avant même qu'elle arrive.
Et regardez ce que va dire Cheikh Abdelaziz Ibn Baz depuis des dizaines d'années, même avant que ces gens-là fassent la da'wah, qui connaissent même ce qu'est la da'wah. Je ne sais pas où ils étaient dans ce temps-là. Et regardez ce qu'il a dit en 1417. Regardez, quand je vous ai dit la date, ça vous fait du combien ça? Plus de 14 ans. Regardez ce qu'il a dit en 1417. Il dit, chez l'imam Abdelaziz Ibn Baz, Oussama ben Laden min al-mufsidin fil ard. Il l'a nommé comme faisant partie de ceux qui promet le désordre sur la terre.
أول ما نصحت رسولا إذا أراد نفع الإسلام والمسلمين أن يعمد إلى بلده الجنوب وأن يفتح المدارس وأن يعين طلبة العلم ويعين الدعوة للجنوب. لا تبغي مدفع والشاش نعم فأبشر، أما هذا ما عندنا إمكانيات. اللهم عليك بأسامة، أي نعم، وعليك أيضا بأبي حمزة وبكل من أراد الفتن في بلاد المسلمين. اللهم اقصر
مشايخ يحذرون يتكلمون على أسامة بن لادن، وكذلك سمعت أن الشيخ بن باز حذر منه، وكذلك هناك من يدافع عنه وهو على شاكلته. نأمل منكم توضيح حاله وحال من هو على شاكلته.
بالنسبة لي أنا لا أعرف بن لادن، ولكن من خلال أعماله ومخططاته فإنه يجب الحذر منه والتحذير منه، تحذير الشباب من مخططه، لأنه حسب ما يظهر وحسب ما ينشر ويتواتر عنه أنه يثير الفتنة بين المسلمين.
أنتم تهدمون دين الله، تهدمون دين الله، تسببون للتضييق على المسلمين في بريطانيا وعلى المسلمين في فرنسا وعلى المسلمين في أمريكا وعلى المسلمين في بلادهم من حكامهم، ويظنون أن الناس مثلكم، يظنون أن الناس مثلكم، أنهم دمويون شفافون للدماء. لا، نحن أول من أنكر عليه من فضل ربي، أننا أول من أنكر عليه. وكأس الرجائل من الأردن فلان ما هو كما قلت يا أبا عبد الرحمن، ومن الكويت محاسبة. نعم، ولكننا إذا ابتلعنا بأمر لا نبالي بمن عاتب. هل تعلمون أحدا ثبت على السنة لليمن بالتحذير من جماعة الفساد؟ لا نعلم أحدا. أنتم تعلمون أحدا فقولوا يا إخوان. أهل السنة في اليمن منذ أراد أسامة أن يشغلها نارا، نحن الذين أنكرنا عليه وأخرجنا الأشرطة في التحذير منه، وماتوا من فضل الله وهزموا من اليمن بسبب تحذيرنا، والفضل في هذا لله سبحانه وتعالى.
تؤيد مثل هذه العمليات مع أن المستهدفين فيها كما يقال في الإعلام مدنيين لا ذنب لهم إلى آخر ما يقال.
نعم، بالنسبة لقضية المدنيين هذا المصطلح كثر استخدامه الآن، ولكن نحن نفضل استخدام المصطلحات التي تداولها فقهاؤنا، فهم يقولون مقاتلين وغير مقاتلين. بالنسبة للمقاتل فهو من حمل السلاح ولو كانت امرأة، وغير المقاتل هو الذي لا مشاركة له في الحرب. بالنسبة للشعب الأمريكي في جملته هو مشارك، لأنه هو الذي انتخب هذه الإدارة، وأيضا هو الذي يمون هذه الحرب. وفي انتخابات في هذه الانتخابات الأخيرة والتي سبقتها كانت هناك خيارات أخرى عند الشعب الأمريكي أن ينتخبوا أشخاص لا يريدون الحرب، ومع ذلك لم يحصلوا إلا على الفتات من الأصوات. ثم نحن قبل أن نتحدث عن أي شيء لابد أن ننظر المسألة من منظار شرعي، وهذا الذي يحسم المسألة هل يجوز أو لا يجوز. لو كان باستطاعة الأخ المجاهد البطل عمر الفاروق أن يستهدف عدة مئات من العسكريين فهذا أمر رائع.
The man known as the underwear bomber was sentenced to life in prison today. Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib tried to blow up a Northwest Airlines plane carrying 300 people on Christmas Day of 2009. He pleaded guilty last October.
لو كان باستطاعة الأخ المجاهد البطل عمر الفاروق أن يستهدف عدة مئات من العسكريين فهذا أمر رائع، لكن نحن نتحدث عن واقع معركة. الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم لو استطاع أن يقاتل في النهار فقط لفعل، ولكن كان هناك أحيانا حالات يرسل فيها السرايا في الليل، وهذه السرايا التي يرسلها صلى الله عليه وسلم في الليل بسبب الظلمة كانت تقتل من النساء والأطفال. فعاد الصحابة رضي الله عنهم إلى الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم واستفسروا عن هذه المسألة، فقال لهم صلى الله عليه وسلم هم منهم، أي أن حكم هؤلاء هو حكم الآباء، فالرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم أجاز هذا العمل.
Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he was asked by some of his companions about women and children getting killed in wars when they are fighting against the combatants, but they are mixed with the combatants, they get killed accidentally. So he said they are from them. Therefore, the Prophet allowed it. That's what he said. Therefore, the Prophet allowed it, giving the impression to the audience that the Prophet allowed hijacking planes and killing the civilians in them. The Sheikh was talking about a hadith that exists in Al-Bukhari. And he responded to the questions about women and children who get hurt when the enemy is raided by night time by saying they are from them. Surprisingly, this hadith is explained in the book, in the background of the Sheikh in the video, which is Fath al-Bari في شرح صحيح البخاري for Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. It's called Fath al-Bari, which is actually the explanation of al-Bukhari. If the Sheikh can just pick the book from behind his back, he will see Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani explaining this hadith this way. Ibn Hajar is saying, it does not mean that women and children can be targeted, but rather if killed in combat against combatants for being around them, there is no sin on the Muslim soldiers then. And he said, and the Zuhri is one of the narrators of the hadith, the one who's narrating the hadith actually from the companions of Prophet Muhammad. So he's a very important person. Ibn Hajar says, and Az-Zuhri never narrated this hadith except if he follows it with the hadith that says, I was told by Ka'b ibn Malik, who was told by his uncle that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, sent his soldiers to fight Ibn Abi al-Haqiq, he prohibited killing the women and the children under any condition, even if the enemy took them as human shields. Sufyan narrated that Az-Zuhri also narrated that the Prophet prohibited completely killing the women and the children, and what proves that that was in Hunayn, which is the last battle against the pagans in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is that he sent his messenger and he told him, tell Khalid ibn al-Walid, tell Khalid not to kill kids or asifs. Asif is, they are actually the farmers, the workers, the servants, and the lay people, and the civilians in today's words. So Az-Zuhri never narrated this hadith except after he narrates also other hadith with them to explain that Prophet Muhammad did not mean to target the non-combatants and to target women and children like Sheikh Anwar wanted to give the impression to his audience. Ibn Hajar says, Ibn Battal says, the consensus of Muslim scholars is that it is totally prohibited to target women and children. Therefore, what Sheikh Anwar al-Awlaqi did is that he used a qiyas fasid, or an invalid analogy. As the Prophet, peace be upon him, meant that if there is no escape from causing casualties among civilians during fighting the combatants of the enemies, then there is no sin in that, but he never allowed targeting non-combatants while hijacking planes and bombing them. So the Prophet did not allow targeting the non-combatants. He said if non-combatants are killed in combat because they are mixed and they are around with their own combatants, this is their own mistake. It's not our mistake. And that's what the Prophet peace be upon him said. So actually this he did is called qiyas fasid. A qiyas fasid, or an invalid analogy, is because the illah or the rationale behind killing them is that they cannot be avoided. While hijacking planes and bombing them actually is targeting them from the beginning.
They will, for example, take the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said everyone should be killed until he or she say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Okay, what about how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the kuffar of Mecca when he conquered Mecca? Did he kill them all? How the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the Jewish of Medina? How the Prophet dealt with the Christians of Najran, South Najran? How the Prophet, why you leave also these very clear evidence and you take one text, one hadith, and the ulama have understood it in different ways, and to pick and choose based on what? Also, it's very interesting that you see that they are when you deal with text evidence, they take it very literally sometimes, and they don't try to understand the meanings of it, the meanings of this textual evidence. Also, they don't care about the understanding of the companions, of the scholars of the early Muslim generations. And this is a clear sign to differentiate between our way as mainstream Muslim and their way. And I'll give you an example, which is very popular today. They use the hadith, and I'm sure all of you heard that. They use the argument the Prophet ﷺ said, move the mushrikeen, the disbeliever, from the Arab Peninsula. All the non-Muslims should be taken out of the Arab Peninsula. You see this hadith been used as justification to fight Westerns in Saudi Arabia or in Arabia in general. And they said that's the rules. That's what the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to do. That's why we are fighting them, to kick them out of Arabia. Okay. And they said this hadith is something the Prophet ﷺ said before his death. Did Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman understood this understanding? Is this how they understand the hadith? Didn't Umar himself, he's the one when the Jewish of Khaybar broke the rules, what he did, he asked them to move to Taym or Tayma, which is still in the Arab Peninsula. Didn't Umar radiallahu anhu ardah allow the Christian to stay in Najran and allowed them to settle in Arabia? Didn't the companions of Muhammad ﷺ used to have servants who are not Muslim living in Medina, and they did not kick them out, and they did not understand from this hadith that they all must be not exist in Arabia? They understood from this hadith that they not allowed in Arabia to have two religion dominate or two religion rules. But it doesn't mean more than one religion exists. No, that's not what the hadith ever meant, and that's not what the companions of Muhammad ﷺ have understood it. Also, they never tell you what the meaning of the Arab Peninsula. Does it mean Mecca and Medina only? It means Mecca and Yemen, Al-Hijaz only? It means the whole entire Arab Peninsula? As you know, most of the scholars, like Imam Ahmed said, it is Medina and the villages around Medina. That's what the hadith meant. And Shafi'i said it is Al-Hijaz. It is Al-Hijaz. We know that even the scholars allowed, some of the scholars like Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, allowed non-Muslim to visit Mecca and Medina. Allowed them as a visitor to enter it.
If I just cut straight to the point, the argument of Islamic terrorists is this. If you choose a government that represents you and they decide to bomb a country or kill people, then you have blood on your hands. It's like hiring, for example, a murderer. You know, if I pay a murderer to go and kill someone, it's not just the murderer that's blameworthy. I share that blame. So if you say by non-competence, these people are voting for a government that is carrying out crimes, then they share the blame. And then obviously in their eyes of the Islamic terrorists, they are blameworthy.
The second evidence of Sheikh Anwar was that the American civilians are the voters who voted for the government that kills Muslims. Where is this in fiqh, Sheikh Anwar? And if it's true, how can you know that every single passenger on the plane is American? A plane leaving from Amsterdam to the United States is maybe having at least 50% of its passengers Dutch. Are the Dutch people those who voted for the American government? And among the Americans there are children who do not have the right to vote even. And among the people who are going to the US, there are people who did not vote at all. And among them there are also people who work in the United States and they are not carrying American passports, so they don't have the right to vote. And even those who voted for this government that fights Muslims, Sheikh Anwar, many of them, and you are the best one to know that because you were born in America and you lived in the United States. Most of the Americans, when they vote, they don't really vote because they like the foreign policy, but maybe because they like the tax policy or the education policy or the healthcare policy. So even those who voted for this government, but not because they will fight the Muslims, those who don't know anything, and you know the Americans so well, those who don't know anything about Palestine, don't know anything about Afghanistan, they don't care about Iraq, all they care about is putting the food on the table for their children, and they vote for a better education or better health policy. Are those to be killed? Are you telling me that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is allowing killing those people?
Our position needs to be reiterated and needs to be very clear. The fact that the U.S. has administered the death and homicide of over 1 million civilians in Iraq, the fact that the U.S. is supporting the deaths and killing of thousands of Palestinians does not justify the killing of one U.S. civilian in New York City or Washington, D.C. And the deaths of 6,000 civilians in New York and Washington, D.C. does not justify the death of one civilian in Afghanistan.
Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, il a dit, les gens continueront à être dans le bien tant qu'ils prendront le ilm de leurs grands parmi leurs ulama et les gens qui sont fiables. Et s'ils les prennent de leurs petits et de leurs mauvais, ils seront perdus, ils vont périr.
أنه السيد قطب رحمه الله ليس عالما، وإنما هو رجل أديب كاتب، وهو لا يحسن التعبير عن العقائد الشرعية الإسلامية وبخاصة منها العقائد السلفية، ولذلك فلا ينبغي أن ندندن حول كلماته كثيرا، لأنه لم يكن عالما بالمعنى الذي نحن نريده، عالما بالكتاب والسنة وعلى منهج السلف الصالح.
If somebody wants to know about Islam and how we should deal with non-Muslims in Islam, then we look to the Quran and the Sunnah the way that it was understood by the companions.
But we just want to remind you, brothers, from all of this, the divine protection, it comes with, again, turning our affairs back to the ulama. And when we say that, when I say that, I don't mean blindly following scholars and everything a scholar says right. That's not what I'm talking about. But we have to be connected to those ulama who are well known to carry the sunnah, the ulama of Islam who are well known for their islah. The Nabi told the people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-baraka ma'akabirikum. The blessings is with those big people from amongst you, meaning the scholars. And from the characteristics of those Khawariji type people is what has been mentioned so many times, that they have crazy ideas and they're young. And the Nabi told the people, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inna min ashrat as-sa'a an yultamis al-ilm 'inda al-asaghir. From the signs of the hours that people will try to get knowledge from the youngsters, the little ones. It first means here the people of innovation, but also people just not qualified and competent. So again, the ulama, the ulama. And Imam Ahmed used to tell the people a principle about our Salafiyah. That was, don't take any position you don't have a scholar preceding you in that position. If that's jihad, what scholar said that? Living with you now. Not Ibn Taymiyyah said and you take a book and read that. Ibn Kathir said and you take a book. No. The scholars who are living with you right now.
Contradiction. They always quote Bin Baz, Ibn Taymiyyah, Hashim Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. But in the same times, they consider them the Taghut, the Jibt. They are very extreme about, they are just a ally to the government. They are just puppet in the hand of the government. Why are you using their fatwa and you say, I go to Ibn Uthaymeen, I'm my Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. Then when Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen said that this is haram or this is not allowed, now you put X on him. Why there is so much contradiction in their ideologies or their basically approach to people?
أحسن الله إليكم. سائل من فرنسا يقول: هناك رجل على الإنترنت يكفر الشيخ بن باز والشيخ الألباني والشيخ ابن عثيمين رحمهم الله تعالى، وهذا الرجل يكفر بعض حكام الدول الإسلامية والعربية. هل يجوز أن ندعو عليه لأن كثيرا من الجهال يتبعونه وينشرون كلامه ويدعون عوام المسلمين إليه؟
إذا كان هذا شأن هذا الرجل فهذا رجل تكفيري، نشأ على التكفير ويعتقد التكفير. وقد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: من قال لأخيه كافر فقد باء بها أحدهما. وهؤلاء الذين يكفرهم تشهد لهم الدنيا بأسرها بأنهم من أهل الإيمان والتقوى والإحسان ومن أئمة العلم. فإذا كان يكفر هؤلاء فلا يبقى أحد على وجه الدنيا يسلم من تكفيره، وعليه أن يتقي الله عز وجل، وعلى أتباعه أن يفروا منه كما يفر العاقل من النار المحرقة، فهو يحرقهم بهذا الفكر. فلا يجوز لأحد أن يتبعه أو يقلده أو ينقل فكره للناس.
I want to just talk about then the final story I'll mention, and that is the story of Dr. Fadl. I just mentioned Dr. Fadl right now. Ayman al-Zawahiri was the one who gave da'wah to Dr. Fadl, and this was back in the 60s when they were both in medical school together. Dr. Fadl was a far more intellectual person from a much more prestigious or educated family, and he was converted to these jihadist movements, and he emigrated immediately after the death of Sadat. Ayman al-Zawahiri was captured, he was tried, he was put into jail for a number of years, and then as soon as he was released, he made his way to Afghanistan, and you know the story from there. He is now who he is. As for Dr. Fadl, he managed to get away before that, and he went to Afghanistan immediately. And as you know, in Afghanistan at that time, the jihadist movement of Osama bin Laden, in fact, Osama bin Laden was a minor player at the time. In the Afghan jihad, you had far bigger names, Hikmat Yar and Rabbani and Ghulam Rasul and all of these big guys, Saif, and all of these guys were there fighting against the Soviet invasion. Back then in the 80s, and I remember this as a young kid growing up, and I would read this in the newspaper, the term Mujahideen was a positive term. CBS, ABC would use the term in a positive sense, the Afghan Mujahideen, and they would show these really cool pictures of people fighting the Soviets. So when you're against the Soviets, you're the good guys. In any case, so Dr. Fadl went and joined the movement back then, and he continued to rise in the ranks of the jihad against the Soviet Union. Eventually, Dr. Fadl became, if you like, the intellectual architect of the movement. And he began to write a lot of writings. He wrote a book which in English is called the Encyclopedia of Jihad. It's basically Al-Umda fi I'dad al-Udda. It is a huge compendium over 1,000 pages long, in which he discusses the importance of jihad, the ahadith of jihad, the ayat of jihad, what the scholars of the past said about jihad. And this book is the standard reference after Al-Faraj's book, which is Al-Faridat al-Ghaiba. Al-Faraj's book is a small booklet. It was really the first, it was the catalyst that started this whole trend. Dr. Fadl came along, and in the 80s he wrote a much more larger book, and it is once again available. It's composed of ayat, hadith statements of the scholars, but of course he means with it something other than what most likely those scholars meant in those days. When the Afghan war died down, he moved to Yemen. And he continued to write his books over there, and he retained his legendary status, online, articles, but he kept a very low profile. 9/11 happened, and even before 9/11, between Ayman al-Zawahiri and Dr. Fadl, a rift began to appear. And they exchanged a number of harsh letters and harsh words. After 9/11, Dr. Fadl broke away completely from the movement that, in all honesty, he had been the intellectual founder of. He had been involved in for the last 30 years. Last year, Dr. Fadl wrote a book entitled Tarsheed al-Jihad, reclaiming jihad, re-guiding jihad, diverting jihad back to where it should be. Tarsheed al-Jihad, you're giving jihad the rushd, or the guidance it should have. And this book sent panic waves amongst the jihadists and the militant movements. Why? Firstly, because of who wrote it. This was a person whose books they grew up reading. This was a person who was their intellectual mastermind. He was their alim. Secondly, because he was speaking from experience. This is not some pacifist. This is not some government-employed scholar. He can't be accused of wanting to live a cushy or cozy life in Egypt or America or someplace. This is the man with the credentials. He's lived the life of a real jihadist. He participated in the Afghan jihad, and then he moved forward. So when he's writing from personal experience. This is a brand new book. It's again very difficult to get a hold of. I managed to find bits and pieces of it here and there. I don't have the full book with me. It's not something that I was able to purchase as of yet. You know, living in America, one of the problems of getting books. Nonetheless, from what I read, this is an amazing book. And I have bits and portions of it translated here. And inshallah, I hope someday somebody translates the entire book. But portions of what he says. Dr. Fadl says that these jihadists of our times, and he calls them jihadiyun, so he uses the term jihadists. These jihadists of our times, they cut and paste from the books of the past. But then he says they have no idea, no clue of the reality that they are living in. I want you to understand, this is a person who has lived the movement. He's a part and parcel of the jihadist trend. He has been in it for 30 years. He has seen the assassination of Sadat. He's been in Afghanistan. He knows Osama bin Laden and Zawahiri personally. And now he is breaking away from the movement. of what he says, these are people, they can quote you the texts, but they have no idea of reality. They don't understand the current circumstances. He accuses the jihadists of many things. He says that these people don't care about scruples and morals. They want to get money from any way possible. He says even from haram means, they just want to get money, even if it's through stealing or something, as long as they then can justify it to use for jihad. The ends justify the means. He criticizes them for the spilling of innocent blood, and he says there is no crime in our sharia that is worse after shirk than spilling innocent blood. And he asks them, what will you answer Allah Azza wa Jal for all the blood that you have shed? And then he tells them, let the kuffar shed the blood that they are doing. What else do you expect them to do? We are Muslims whom Allah has given a divine guidance. We should be role models. We shouldn't stoop to their level. He says, and I quote, I'm quoting directly from the translation I made. It's my translation, so if I'm wrong, the response to me is on me. O believers, don't listen to those with fancy slogans who entice you to enter a conflict you are not qualified to participate in. Remember that. Don't listen to fancy rhetoric and slogans. When people are enticing you to enter a military conflict, you are not qualified. He accuses the jihadist leaders of not only lacking Islamic knowledge, but he says you have no knowledge of warfare. You have no knowledge of politics. You have no knowledge of modern economics. You're a bunch of rebels who think they're going to change the system without knowledge of the Sharia, without knowledge of reality. What do you think you're going to accomplish? And he says the harm that you bring about is more than any good that you think you gain. Exactly my analogy of throwing sticks at a fire that's burning. What do you think is going to happen? The harm that you bring about is more than the good that you think that you gain. What is the point, he says, if you destroy one building of theirs and they bomb 100 of your cities? What is the point in killing one of theirs when they retaliate by killing 1,000 of you? Wallahi, these are the words. I can't say he's an alim, he's not an alim. These are the words of a wise man. These are the words of a wise man. What is the point of all of this senseless violence when the response is going to be more senseless violence directed to ourselves? Brothers and sisters, it never ceases to amaze me how shallow militants are, how hudatha'ul asnani sufaha'ul ahlam, how overzealous and undereducated. They cannot think 2 steps ahead. It's only 1 step. Kill, kill, kill. Get rid of them. Well, what's going to happen after you kill the person in front of you? What will be the retaliation? What will be step 2? They never think 2 steps ahead. What did Juhayman think when he trapped the Kaaba and he held it hostage? What would happen after that? What did Jama'at al-Takfir think when they assassinated Sadat? What would happen after that? What did Al-Jama'at al-Islamiyya think when they massacred hundreds of civilians in Egypt? Another long story that we don't have time to talk about. What did Hassan Abu Nidal think when he killed a bunch of American servicemen? What would be the retaliation? What would be the next step? You're going to make life even more difficult for your Muslim brothers and sisters. In conclusion, brothers and sisters, especially brothers, in conclusion, brothers and sisters, there's a lot to be angry about in the world today. There's a lot that deserves our condemnation. There's a lot that should make our blood boil. But our religion is not based upon mere knee-jerk emotional responses. Our religion is better than that. Be angry, I tell you. Wallahi, be angry. Be angry every time a bomb is dropped on innocent civilians in the name of the war on terror. Be angry every time our tax dollars are spent to oppress yet another group of innocent Palestinians. Be angry every time more draconian measures are utilized against us in this greatest democracy on earth. Be angry. And if you're not angry, then there's a problem. There's a problem in your Islam, and you know what? There's even a problem in your humanity. Be angry. I'm not telling you not to be angry, but what I am telling you, channel that anger in a productive manner. Channel it in a useful manner. Don't be like the person who's just throwing more sticks at the fire thinking he's doing something. Be the person who uses his rational head. Be the person who uses his iman and taqwa to control that anger. Channel that anger not into acts of rage, not into acts of violence, not into acts of militancy, not into foolish and useless rhetoric that will only bring about undue attention to you and greater suspicion of the Muslim community. Don't be an overzealous kid with foolish dreams.